Welcome to Fresh Outlook. I'm Frank Cipolla, and we start this show with a look at the state of education in America. Between rising college costs, crushing student debt, and a changing employment landscape, we have all the makings of a very confusing time for college kids and parents as well. So, what do recent college grads and those just starting college need to know? Joining us to discuss this, our political psychologist, Dr. Bart Rossi. Also, Stephen Sirot, who is with the College Benefits Research Group, and Janet Loren, she is also with the group and a certified educational planner as well. Let's start off right off the bat with what a certified educational planner is, Janet.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us
You're
today.
welcome.
A certified educational planner really works with families. We're board certified. We do have quite a rigorous exam that we have to take every 5 years. But it's really about how many students you work with, and also how many campuses you visit. I visit over 50 campuses a year, talk with admissions people, so that I can really work with a student and a family about finding the right academic and the right social fit. So that's what we really do.
Now, Stephen, you and Janet are partners. You're the founder of the company.
Correct.
It seems to me, we talked a little bit before we went on, that this is something that was a no-brainer. I'm surprised it took so long for these companies to start bubbling up because of all the problems with student debt and student loans.
Well, most certainly. I mean, I've been a financial advisor longer than I can admit, actually. And, you know, it seemed that every client that I would meet with, if they had children, somehow the conversation would make it back to, how are we going to afford college, Steve? So in just trying to be the most knowledgeable planner that I could be, I started to see how you can help people pay for college. One of that was, you got to save a lot of money, right? And if I met with that client every year and I saw they weren't saving enough, I could say to them, you need to save more money. Genius, right? But what do you do with people that come to you when their kids are in high school?
Sure, you have other expenses in your life along
There's
the way.
not the time.
But how did we get to this point? I mean, I went to school 30 some odd years ago, and the inflation rate for college education is skyrocketing compared to everything else.
Absolutely.
How did we get to this point? Anyone? Dr. Bart?
I don't know. I think the colleges are so successful. There's a demand for kids to be there, and they can charge these outrageous prices. I mean, it's gone through the roof. But I'm also mostly interested in what they're doing from the psychologist's point of view in terms of, you know, what we talk about is mental set. You know, what kind of a mental set does a person have? And I think these kids, you know, going to school, they really need to have the right mental set in terms of what type of school is best for them. It might not be the best rated school, the highest rated school, but what is a good fit for this particular young person? And I think this is a wonderful idea, really, to help kids learn what school might be attractive to them in terms of social and as well as academic well-being.
Well, Janet, how far do you get into the student's personality? He or she might want to be something, and you may say, well, maybe that's not the right fit for you, or certainly this school is not the right fit for you.
Absolutely.
Do you interview them and get a feel of what kind of person they are?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I do. I sit with them and we talk about what their strengths are, what their loves are, what their passions are. And then we try to find schools that really will meet those, so that they can really have a great experience and be successful when they go to college.
Steve, let's throw this back to you with the original question. How did we get here? How did we get to college education per year, maybe 35 to 45? You said a little while ago that it's starting to creep up into the $70,000 a year range. How did we get there?
More and more colleges that start with a 7, which is scary. I mean, there's a lot that's behind it. A lot of the financial aid practices that are out there, but at the same time, we've seen tuition increases between 7 and 9% a year for well over 30 years now.
Right.
We've also seen the amount of financial aid, both need and merit-based aid, go up. Now, not as fast, unfortunately, but there's a lot more of that going on, where even though the sticker price of a school might be $60,000, $70,000, there's not that many students that are actually ending up paying that full boat. And so it gives the colleges more leeway in how they can manage the enrollment of their school, where they could get students that might pay in full, so that they have a pool of money to get this really strong students that college needs to maintain their rankings.
Well, our friends in Washington would say they're using the kids as a source of revenue. They found a new source of revenue. They get these young kids in debt early. They have their entire lives to pay it off, and they have a customer paying them something every month for their entire lives. I mean, is that too simplistic to say that they've located a source of revenue, a revenue stream, and they're tapping into it?
It's actually dead on. If you just, everyone's heard about that, that $1 billion of student debt now, and growing all the time. And the biggest lender of that is the federal government. They recently made those interest rates a little bit more in line, but they're very high. I mean, we're talking 6, 7, 8, 9%, and they're not dischargeable in bankruptcy. So these students are coming out with a world of debt they can't get away from.
No, you make a very good point. You cannot discharge that in bankruptcy, so that is there forever. It's connected to you no matter what, forever. Do you talk to students, Janet, and say, look, you may not have the financial means to pull this off. Maybe you should lower your sights and you'll thank me later?
Well, we talk about it because we talk about right fit. And that can save a tremendous amount of money, because the reason students transfer, and about a third of them do, transfer from their first original college, the reason they transfer is the social fit, more than the academic fit. So if we can find the right school at the beginning, then we're going to save them money. Nowadays, if you include wages lost and also the college fees, a student can pay almost $70,000 for an additional year. So we can save that by finding the right school.
Well, you mentioned a good point here. Doctor, what kid at 18 knows exactly what they want to do and where their head is at that age? They probably don't.
No, this is the question, really, because you don't know. I mean, it'd be great if someone knows that they want to be a scientist, or they're going to lean in the direction of maybe
what percentage of kids know at the age of 18?
That's a small percentage, a relatively small percentage. But you're right. It's very difficult for someone to really determine where they're going to end up. So I think that's why these folks are even more important, because they can highlight, what type of education they might be attracted to. It might be fun, it might be educational for them, they could learn a lot, and then make some educated decision as
when they're a bit older.
Well, after the first year, into the second year, they can start thinking about more clearly where they want to go. So I think this is all important, but even so, I think even when you're a sophomore, for a lot of kids, it's hard to decide where you're going to go. So I think that having somebody on a kid, somebody coaching, and coaching the parents as well, because sometimes parents have a different view. They think that their kid should go to this school for a particular reason. It's not the right school. Socially, it's not the right school. Maybe academically, it's fine, but so what? Even if it is great academically, if the kid's not going to be happy, how's that going to work?
Jen, how many kids do you bump into that really don't know what they'd like to do and maybe are not really set on college?
Most of them.
Really?
Actually, we have a small group that we call our track students.
You call them what?
Track students.
Track students, yeah.
And they are the pre-meds, the pre-vets, the pharmas.
Engineering.
My son, an engineer, went right through, works for Microsoft, straight through. But most of our students are what we call path students. They're finding their way. And what we try to find, again, is their strengths and what their interests are, so that we can find a college which will allow them to explore those.
Well, how many kids say, hey, I want to go to this school, this college, because all my friends are going?
We hear it all the time. They've been together. They want the party to keep going.
Into college.
This time there's no parent supervision, and that's what they're envisioning. We like to say to the student, well, even if you went with your best friend to college, within about 2 weeks, you're probably barely ever going to bump into them again, because it's a whole different world, and they don't know it. So we want to be criteria based, and we focus really on academic, social, and financial fit equally when we're starting, because we don't like to tell a student or a family or parents that they should be settling. So if they have an expectation of this school, we want to examine why, and is it realistic? Is it criteria based, or is it sort of following the herd, or a particular ranking that they saw in a magazine or something? So we don't think you have to settle, because there's a plan. It may not be the same for every student and family, but there's a plan you could find to help them achieve the best fit in those areas.
Well, you bring up a very good point, because I have a college professor friend, and he says, Frank, a lot of the kids are treating this as a country club where they stop by, and it's really not a place to learn. Now, I'm sure you see that, especially with an 18-year-old brain going into college.
Absolutely, but I actually think that the social psychological aspect of this whole thing is more important than the academics, really, because, and the reason I say that is many of these schools are fine academically. They have a lot of good programs in their schools. Some are better than others, of course, but really it doesn't matter how good the school is if the student to begin with is not going to be happy going to that particular place. So I think the social psychological phenomena of this is really much more important, and parents get really narrow-minded in terms of, my kid should go to Columbia, you know, or if my kid could get into Harvard, they should go to Harvard. Well, maybe not. Maybe that would not be a very good idea for that kid.
How many moms and dads, maybe they've gone to these Ivy League schools, want their kids to go there as well because they want their resume to say Cornell or Harvard or whatever the case may be. And it may not be the right fit. How do you dissuade them from doing that when you know that won't be a right fit?
We really talk about the school culture. And that's what we really talk about. That's why I visit so many schools, to really find out about the school culture.
And what are you looking for when you visit?
Well, I talk to the admissions officers to see really what they're looking for. That's one of the things. But I also look at the students who are there. I talk to them. I look at what they're wearing. I look at what the campus is like. You can feel it when you go into the student union. Is it a bookie campus? Is it a campus where they're all sitting reading quietly? Is everybody talking?
Or is it a party campus, which you probably see as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. Honestly, there's partying going on at most campuses. It's just that there's also at a lot of campuses, there's a lot of learning going on as well.
Steve, ballpark figure, college is a big investment. How much it would be to hire you guys to really scope out which one would be best for me?
I mean, it depends on the family, when they come to us, what they need. Some families we focus only on financials, some only on the academic. You know, if I have a client that makes $10 million a year, they really don't care what it costs. They said, get my kid into X, Y, and Z. But most of our clients are really focused on both. And I think that's what makes our company unique, in that in our industry, most planners are either academic or financial. We believe it must be both. And so that our main package would probably range around between $3,000 to $5,000 typically.
Well, how do you have that uncomfortable conversation with the parents of an 18-year-old when you have to tell them that they're not exactly Harvard material or Cornell material or Columbia material, that maybe they don't have the same skill sets you had at that age, and maybe they're not right for that school? Well,
really what you want to think of it instead is that school right for you? Not just, are you right for that school? Janet tells me all the time how there's no one school that produces all the great, you know, insert whatever you want, doctor, lawyer, you know, politician, etc. So it's what will this school be able to really help you accomplish? And by and large, if a school's got internship opportunities or job opportunities, they're not showing it to their bottom 10%. They're showing it to the students. They expect it to be their best students, because that's a big part of how they measure success. So you really hit on it, where is it the school that makes the student? Probably more the student makes the school. And that's the way we're looking at it.
We got a minute and a half to this segment. How important is it in this day and age that it do say Harvard on your resume or Columbia on your resume?
Not that important. Great question, but it's really not that important. I mean, it could be important if you're looking for a real high-level job and it says Harvard or it says Princeton, but by and large, it doesn't make a significant difference, because when it comes to the interview, the person's being interviewed, and their traits and their characteristics are going to shine, who they are, what kind of experiences they've had, and how they project themselves as a person. That's more important than being at Harvard.
So it's almost their upbringing to the point of the age of 18 where you start to figure out where that kid's head is at. And you're probably thinking all the time, where is this kid's head at? Is he immature? Is he mature? Is he on a track? Is he finding his way? So you're probably looking for that.
Absolutely, and there are different paths for each student. So some student might not be mature enough to go to college, so we talk about a gap year. Sometimes a student needs...
And how does that go over with the parents? Your kid needs a gap year.
We talk about it, and usually, you know, the whole process here is about managing expectations.
But if I'm a parent, I'm saying, you know, if that kid takes a year off, he may never go to college.
Well, it's not just a year off. A gap year is a guided year, and they have to be doing something, because if the colleges see that, sometimes it's better for a student. They really can. Some
So
colleges
he or she is
like
involved
that.
in some sort of activity, helping the community?
Absolutely.
Or
Absolutely.
and how does that go over?
Fine, really well. As long as the family's open to different ways of having that student educated.
All right. When we come back, we're going to talk about the issue that we've sort of been skirting here, and that's the money issue, and how these kids pay back these loans and everything like that, because we've seen it, and we've just touched on it briefly with Steve. But when we come back, we'll continue our discussion about the state of education in America when Fresh Outlook continues in just a moment.